Another outfield option, an actually realistic option, is off the board, and the Guardians are putting themselves in a precarious position.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Guardians fans? Are you feeling the rage today? Because I am a little bit. Thanks for hanging out for the next half hour on Locked On Guardians, the only daily podcast that covers your team, your Cleveland Guardians, every day from the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Thanks to all of you. I'm Justin Lada, one of your two co-hosts. If you are new here, if you're not, well, welcome back, of course. And one of your two co-hosts for the last 3 years of counting, also 18 years of experience covering the Guardians minor league system as a prospect writer and editor. Jeff has the day off today, so you get to enjoy a one-man solo rant about the rage of inaction and the Guardians' approach to the offseason. We'll get into hitting and if the Guardians can change philosophy with a new minor league hitting coach. We'll talk about the relief edition of the day, which is seemingly every day now. It's Cody Heuer, not Heuer, Heuer, as the Guardian said. And then first, we'll talk about another outfield option that is coming off the board for the Guardians to consider signing. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the NFL action all season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long. And thank you to all of everydayers. Everybody seemed to enjoy Monday's episode because we thought the Guardians' potential interest in bringing Lane Thomas back, and the only reason they didn't agree to a deal or he chose to go to Kansas City was because he wanted more playing time. The Cleveland Guardians weren't going to guarantee it, which made a lot of sense for that guy, for him and for the Guardians both. I think that made a lot of sense. But we thought that signaled that maybe they know where their next interest is coming from, that maybe that was the kind of role they were trying to fit. So you all enjoyed that. So appreciate you guys making us part of your routine, listening to that episode. Shout out to all of our everydayers. Shout out to the insiders, everybody in the Everydayer Club. We appreciate all of you this time of year, even though it's frustrating. It's a frustrating time to be a Guardians fan, even though, you know, we acknowledge that they are back-to-back division champs for the first time since 2017, 2018. And the franchise is run really well. The front office is smart. They know what they're doing, obviously, right? I don't care what anybody says about what division you play in and everybody else. To go out and win division titles the way they do in 2022 and 2024, 2025, it is difficult, especially with the restraints they work under. That being said, my rage went up to 11 on Tuesday or Monday when I found out that Rob Refsnyder signed with the Mariners for 1 year, $6.25 million. Now, he was only projected to get $5 million. 6.25 is a little above that. And I did say in my Want to Be a GM show the other week that I would give him the $5 million deal. I would have been okay giving Rob Refsnyder $6.25 million. And the problem with getting upset over this is that Rob Refsnyder himself is not a player to get upset over losing. Like, he's not a guy you should sit there and really freak out about not getting. The problem, it goes deeper with that. The problem is the Guardians in action. It's the lack of options for them to turn to. It's the lack of faith that they're going to add to this offense. And the problem with losing out on a guy like Rob Refsnyder is that he checked so many boxes for the Guardians. I know some people disagreed with me. I don't think $6.25 million was a really big reach for a guy who's going to play 30% of the time, or 20, whatever. I don't think it was. And I understand Cleveland doesn't want to block young players. Rob Refsnyder was not going to block anybody, right? He's going to face lefties. And he fits what the Guardians are trying to do offensively. He doesn't chase out of the zone. He hits the ball hard. He barrels. He's a solid defensive outfielder. Now, he can't play center field, but finding center field options out of the market is going to be really, really hard. Like, I have to pull up the roster resource tab and see, like, who is in center field that's available, because don't even ask me about Cody Bellinger. Harrison Bader, no thanks. He's going to cost more than Rob Refsnyder, and guess what? He's going to want to play every day. Cleveland already said they don't want to block anybody, so that's not an option. The rest of your options are Chas McCormick, who the Astros wanted to trade, but now he can be had for free, basically. Manuel Margot, Kike Hernandez, Garrett Hampson, Dylan Carlson. It's left-handed. Really great options out there, guys. Let me tell you. Those aren't even stocking stuffers. That's the gum you scrape off your shoe walking on the street to the stadium. Nobody wants those guys. Half those guys aren't even going to get jobs. If they do, they're going to be signing minor league non-invite deals, like Stuart Fairchild, who the Guardians already have. And look, Cleveland's always going to need young prospects to flourish, right? That's how this team wins. They need guys like Chase DeLauder, and they need a George Valera to get healthy and play, and they need a Travis Bazzana to come up and break out. They're always going to need that. Go back to 2016 when Lindor came up. Everything changed. Jose broke out. Lindor was part of the team, right? Santana and Kipnis were veterans. You had guys that were part of the core that grew up here. Santana, Chisenhall. Chisenhall was a high pick. Those guys are always going to have to work out for Cleveland. But what you need to add to those groups are guys like Rajai Davis's, Austin Jackson's, Brandon Geyer's, Mike Napoli's. Those are the guys you have to add to the players you develop first. And that's what Cleveland's not doing right now. They are not complementing their young players. This is why I said weeks ago, Cleveland's approach to free agency doesn't work, because they're not willing to pay for complement players. They're willing to pay for depth, not complement players. And maybe Rob Refsnyder had other reasons to go to Seattle, right? Maybe he got a guarantee of more playing time. Maybe he likes the area. I think his wife is from Arizona. Maybe those were all better options. So maybe Cleveland said, we'll offer you $6.25 million. He said, no, I'd rather go to Seattle if the money's equal. Would I have given him $7 million to make the difference? I don't know, maybe, but it's not my money. But the other option left is essentially Austin Hayes. And the reason I got frustrated about it is because not even for any fan reasons. It's frustrating for the lack of attention that this roster deserves, the fan base deserves. This is a good team. Let's not get away from that. This is still a good team. Now they finished one of the worst offensive seasons for a division champion of all time, and it took an historic collapse for the Tigers as well. But the Guardians still had to win those games, and they did. And yes, it was because of pitching. But you should be saying, this definitely blows the water out on guys like Mike Chernoff at the end of the season press conference saying, we know that our outfield didn't hit. We know our offense was bad. We need to address that. They haven't addressed it yet. Stuart Fairchild is not addressing it, and we're not asking for a lot. I just want to talk about the team making some meaningful addition, not even for any concept of fandom. I want to talk about it in the term of, okay, Rob Refsnyder makes your lineup a little bit better. He can take some of the burden off of your young players, right? He has a specific role on the team. He's a veteran. He can help you platoon. He can help you rest guys like Chase DeLauder, George Valera. So you're not counting on all those guys to play 150 games and expecting rookies to carry the load to help Jose Ramirez and Kyle Manzardo, and that's pretty much it, right? Or Stephen Kwan. Austin Hayes is still out there. I'd rather have Rob Refsnyder. Austin Hayes is a dude who makes sense. Maybe that's who they end up with. Can't play center field. But that can't be your only move anyway, right? That can't be your only move. And I just want to talk about a player who makes this team a little bit better, that says, okay, this team's not going to finish in last in offense again. They might. How much can you expect to get better with Stephen Kwan, who consistently has bad second halves? You don't know how much Chase DeLauder can play. You don't know how much George Valera can play, if he can play. And then your rest of your options are to platoon him with Angel Martinez or Daniel Schneemann, and you got Nolan Jones, who exists. CJ Kafis could play some outfield. David Fry is going to play a little bit more. The DH spot might be open, so maybe that's how they rotate things. I'm frustrated for the fans. I'm frustrated for the fact that they haven't done anything to address a terrible offense when there's a need, and you can do it without blocking young players at a reasonable cost, like Rob Refsnyder. My rage will come down a little bit if they sign Austin Hayes, but it's not going to come down all the way because Austin Hayes doesn't solve the problem. They need to do more than that. And he's not as good of an option as Rob Refsnyder was. Now, Hayes has a little bit more power. He might be more playable against right-handers than Refsnyder. Maybe that's fine. But he does chase. He's not as good of an outfielder. Doesn't have a great arm. He doesn't really fit. That's why I was mad about Refsnyder, because he checked a lot of the boxes. To let that go is just really frustrating. And again, maybe he had his reasons for going to Seattle. Maybe we'll find that out, that Cleveland decided they wanted him, but he said Seattle's a better fit for me. And then I get that. But the problem is you're not adding anybody else. Like it's going to be Austin Hayes or what? We'll talk more about this. And if there's one thing to be happy about, the Guardians are cornering the market on interesting relief depth. We'll talk about that next. NFL Sundays, we know that they move fast. One big play, and suddenly the whole game has shifted, and that is what makes live betting on FanDuel so exciting, because you're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment in the game. We know it's the most fun when the game does start to shift. You see a receiver starting to get open and catch the ball, get into a rhythm with his quarterback, or the defense flips the game over with a turnover. That is when you can jump into the moment. The Cavs, they took care of business on Monday against the Hornets. They get the back-to-back of a home game series, and they get to face the Pelicans. So maybe things are back on track there. So the Browns, they are finishing up another miserable season. They're facing the Steelers this week. If you're a Browns fan, maybe you want to enjoy a little bit of extra money by betting on the Browns to lose to the Steelers, so you can make the misery a little bit better. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen, and thank you for making Locked On Guardians the #1 sports podcast network. We do really appreciate that. So you guys are all awesome for that. You already live your team every single day. Take it up a level and go ad-free for Locked On Guardians. Join the Everydayer Club today and get all of the Locked On Guardians episodes ad-free with no interruptions, members only Discord access, and more for $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonguardians.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, let's finish up what we were talking about with the Guardians outfield. And I don't want Austin Hayes to be the only thing, but I don't know what you can really expect. Like, if Chase Lauder hadn't had all these injury issues, he'd already be up anyway, let's be honest. And we wouldn't be as worried. If George Valera hadn't had all those injury issues, we'd have an answer on him as well. But you're cobbling together the same thing you did a year ago with platoons, and they didn't work. Martinez hit lefties well. Is he going to, was that a 1-year sample? I don't know. The approach certainly isn't good. We'll talk more about approach in the third segment. Daniel Schneemann, he's a bench player who you can't push into the lineup more than you already did. Nolan Jones didn't show anything last year. Production-wise, there were some decent things out of the hood. Are you expecting him to all of a sudden break out this year? It seems like the Guardians are. CJ Kafis, I like that. It's a lot of hope. David Fryer coming back and using him as a catcher. Maybe he caddies in right field, right? Maybe he DHs. It's a lot of hope for a team that's won back-to-back division titles, that has a pitching staff that should be worthy of contending for a division title. Again, a playoff spot. And again, impact, that's where your impact is going to come from, right? I understand that, guys like Rob Refsnyder and Austin Hayes, these are not big impact guys. That's why I said, it's silly to get upset over them, but it's not the players that we're upset about, right? Yeah, I mean, yes, Rob Refsnyder checked a lot of boxes. I don't know what the right fit is for Austin Hayes, and if he's going to want consistent playing time. Maybe, if Austin Hayes is the last guy available in this round of musical chairs, and he says, I want 400 bats. Well, guess what? The Guardians aren't going to guarantee him 400 bats, and they shouldn't. They need a 300, 350 at bat guy to hit lefties, to give Chase Lauder some rest so he can actually play a full season and not rely on George Valera. And those guys you're signing aren't going to be major impact guys. They're complementary. And the frustration comes from the inaction. It comes from the idea that they're just not going to do anything. Again, Mike Chernoff sat there and said at the end of the season press conference that they understood their outfield didn't produce and their offense didn't produce. And those are things they have to work on and address. They said it, and that's why we always say you have to look at their actions and not their words. Well, so far, their actions have addressed the bullpen, which is something they said and something that need to be done. And I don't want to say I trusted that they would get it done, and maybe they still will. It's December 23rd. The spring training doesn't start for another 2 months or 6 weeks at this point. Wow, that's crazy to say. So maybe they will. I thought they would address it the way they did pitching last offseason, where they were very sure they needed to address pitching, and they did. And I know again, they don't want to block young players. I get that. And maybe you can't get a free agent outfielder to commit to your team and say, I'm not coming to Cleveland because you want to give Chase DeLauder 500 at bats, or you want to give George Valera 400, whatever it is. Maybe free agents are saying, I'm not doing that. And I totally get that. I totally get that from their standpoint. But the problem is, if that action has to come from a trade, I don't know who's out there. I don't know what outfielder that checks the boxes is out there on the market. The only teams that are really trading those kind of guys right now, you have to look at the Rangers kind of are done with that. But the only guys that are really being traded at this point were, from the Cardinals. Well, they have left-handed hitting outfielders. They have Nootbaar, and there's Brendan Donovan. Austin Hayes and Brendan Donovan might represent the best chance for this team to upgrade their offense this offseason. I don't see any other ways necessarily that stick out to me. And maybe it'll come out of nowhere because some of their trades have in the past, but I don't see it off the top of my head. It's hard to squint and see. And that's what's frustrating. It's not the players. It's the inaction. It's the philosophy. It's the words they didn't back up. All right. What they have backed up is pitching, right? Let's talk about Cody Heuer. Now, and I know some people were upset about Cody Heuer. Sorry, Cody Heuer. And they were saying, stop signing relievers. We need a bat. And yes, that's true. They need help offensively. I will never turn down, and no team should turn down, a guy like Cody Heuer, who they can get on a non-roster invitee deal to spring training, because Cody Heuer has a ton of upside. He has 2 years of club control left. He's got an option. He is an extension monster. We're talking 7.1 inches of extension on his delivery, a nice 3-pitch mix, which you don't get out of a lot of relievers these days. He's got I think a 31-degree arm angle, 30-degree arm angle, which is lower than the 37 that Hunter Gaddis and Cade Smith have. It's a little higher than it's lower than Sean Armstrong. It's higher than Gaddis and Smith. Anyway, it's a different look, and Cleveland needs different arm angles out of that bullpen a lot. That's what teams are going for these days. And it costs absolutely nothing to add non-roster invitee relievers like this, okay? You're going to cut a bunch of these guys in AAA anyway, okay? Davis Sharp, Jack Leftwich, Tanner Burns, all those guys are probably going to be cut in spring training, if not sometime during the 2026 season, unless all of a sudden things turn around for them. So they need these arms like this. And I don't think Cody Heuer is going to be the last. He hasn't been healthy since 2021. Okay, he did pitch a little bit this year, which was good, but his last healthy year before that was 2021 because he's had Tommy John, and then he missed 2 years because of a fractured elbow. So you're taking a gamble on this guy being healthy at age 29. But again, he's not on your 40-man roster. He's making the league minimum. He has an option. If you do put him on the 40-man roster, you can have him for 2027 if things go really, really well. It's not a bad signing. It is completely separate of the offensive situation. These are the kind of signings they should keep doing. They should not be dedicating any more roster spots to major league relievers. But anytime you can get a Cody Heuer with that pedigree, I mean, I thought the White Sox were insane to trade him to the Cubs along with Nick Madrigal for Craig Kimbrell, who blew up in their faces, deservedly so. But Heuer wasn't healthy with the Cubs, and Nick Madrigal never panned out how I thought. So that just shows you sometimes how things go. Both teams lost that trade. Sometimes you win trades, sometimes one team loses, sometimes both lose. The point is, never a bad signing. We'll talk more about Cody Heuer, and we'll talk about the Guardians Can their new coach further hitting development with a different philosophy? We'll discuss that next. We are right in the middle of basketball season. There's nothing like being in the arena, right? Crowd, the energy, the moments you cannot get inside of just sitting on your couch. The only problem is getting tickets. That can be a hassle. You got queues, logins, and prices that change at checkout. And that is why Game Time is a game changer. It puts the advantage back in fans' hands like you and I. It makes scoring great. NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I've used Game Time multiple times for multiple events. Cavs tickets, comedy shows, concerts, all those sorts of things you can find over on Game Time. Makes for a great last-minute gift idea. You don't got to wait for shipping. You don't got to wrap it. Very easy to get live events on Game Time at a great price at the last minute. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Keep up with all the Guardians news this offseason on Locked On Guardians. Hit the bell on YouTube to get notified of the newest episode of Locked On Guardians. Reaction videos whenever any major signings happen, if that ever happens, beside Sean Armstrong, or auto download wherever you get podcasts. We're free everywhere. You keep the show in your feed no matter what's going on, even during the holiday season. You can listen on your drive to grandma's house as long as you're not running her over with any reindeer. Or you can also listen while you're baking, doing last minute shopping. We're everywhere with you. And you can also get the notifications on YouTube as well. Appreciate that. Okay, Cody Heuer. Listen to this AAA bullpen right now. The guys that are going to AAA. You've got Franco Alamán. You've got Colin Holderman, who both have options, by the way. You have Cody Heuer now, who has options. We're waiting to see if Justin Brule clears waivers. It sounds like he might, the way things are going right now. So those guys, and two of those guys, Holderman and Alamán, are on the 40, right? And then in the major leagues, you've got Brogdon, you've got Peyton Pallette, Herron, Festa, Sabrowski, Armstrong, Gaddis, Smith. And the Guardians are sort of taking a Moneyball approach to their bullpen, to their roster this offseason, because very clearly they haven't addressed the offense yet. And I know people keep saying the bullpen isn't the problem. The bullpen is always the problem. Even if your bullpen is good, it is still a problem because no bullpen is usually consistent year to year. Look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers bullpen was their saving grace in 2024. They won the World Series because they had guys pitching out of the bullpen left and right. Their starters were just junked together by the end. They still won. In 2025, their bullpen was a disaster. Their big free agent signing Tanner Scott might have been hurt, and he pitched all year, and it screwed some things up. Their bullpen was a disaster, and they won because of their starting rotation, because of the Dodgers, because they covered up everything with money. The Guardians don't have that option, okay? No matter how much what they do, they don't have that option. And there was an Oakland A's approach a couple of years ago where they went out and basically, took their strength and made it stronger. It was their pitching staff or their bullpen. I can't remember what it was. I think it was 2014. And they ended up losing in the wild card game to the Royals that year, or it was 2015. I think that was the year they traded for John Lester, maybe. Anyway, everyone said, well, they already have good pitching. Why are they making it stronger? Because they didn't see an avenue to upgrade their offense. They said, you know what, screw it. We'll make our pitching even that much better. And that's not really going to work for Cleveland because their offense, outside of guys like, again, all your rookies, all your DeLauders, Valeras, Bazanas, Manzardos, Kafases, unless those guys all come together and have big rookie years, you're not going to have that big offensive breakout that's going to carry you. So they are trying to go out and make those pitching ads. You always need depth, okay? You always need depth. There's no such thing as a bad minor league signing, especially when it comes to pitching. Guys always get hurt. Somebody in spring training, the second week of spring training, somebody is going to come down with an elbow injury, is going to need Tommy John. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to miss the first half of the year. That always happens in spring training, okay? So that's why this keeps happening. I am not going to get mad about any reliever signings, especially when they're minor league deals. Now, if they spent like $5 more million bringing back Jake Junis, I might get a little weird about that because they don't need that right now. But as far as minor league stuff goes, I can't get mad about that. Maybe the Guardians think they can make some philosophy changes in the minors with hitting. Maybe they can bring some prospects along with some new, fresh coaching, some new eyes on them, some new voices to listen to. Sometimes that does help. So one of the new Guardians minor league hitting coaches is Mike Snow. He worked with the Angels. He's also been at Driveline, who doesn't do just pitching, by the way. They do hitting. So he's got experience as a minor league coach. He's worked at Driveline. So that means Travis Bazan is obviously probably very familiar with him because he spends a lot of time up there as well. And I thought he had an interesting couple of quotes on Twitter from a couple months ago before the Guardians hired him about his philosophy overall. I'm going to read you some of the tweets he had if you didn't see them already. So this first one I found very interesting. He said, the neuroscience behind hitting is fascinating to him because over the last year or so, last offseason, he did some digging into how the brain processes and predicts ball flight for incoming pitches. So you're trying to predict ball flight, like if it's going to drop, if it's going to look like it's going to go up, those rising fastballs. And that tells the body how to move the barrel to the predicted point in space. So you're trying to read where that ball is going to end up and where to position your barrel, where to get the barrel to. And he said one of the choices he looked into was choice paralysis. Pitchers are always adding more pitch types. Like Sean Armstrong added his sweeper, right? We talked about that. That creates different looks for hitters, creates more chaos, confusion when developing approach. The more choices the brain has to sift through and evaluate, the less likely it is to make a definitive choice and take action on that choice. So eliminating pitches and zones is going to be more and more important to reduce anxiety and allow for intentional and decisive plans and actions. Now, he acknowledged that approach is never going to be perfect. The pitcher will always try to create deception. They're going to throw pitches you aren't looking for in certain counts. But the less decision-making your brain has to do, the quicker you can tell your body how and when to move. So it's fewer choices, more clarity. More clarity equals more swing conviction, which can lead to results. I think that's a fascinating view on it because the Guardians have had a lot of guys with very bad approaches at the plate. And that's more of passivity to me than it is the John Kensley Noel kind of thing. Maybe it could have been the Noel thing. I don't know. Which, by the way, we still haven't heard what's happening with that. I think that's fascinating, though. If you can help guys with their process this way, like changing approach, as Jeff and I have always said, and everybody will tell you, changing approach is very, very hard. It is one of the hardest things to change for a prospect. But if you can go through and talk to them about reducing choices, eliminating pitches, you can get better results with more conviction on your swings. I'm very curious to see if this can take hold and take root for the Guardians in their minor league system. You know, how can that help them with pitch recognition? How can it help them with guys who are inclined to be swing happy, like a Noel, like a Rodriguez, like Oscar Gonzalez used to be? If those guys are jumpy, they might always be jumpy. So we'll see how that does. But I'm fascinated by that. I think it's a great way to look at things because that is true. Pitchers are always going to add things. That's why you see 3 fastballs being important because they don't want hitters focusing on one pitch that has velocity. They want to make sure they have multiple pitches in the 90-mile-an-hour range. So you can't just sit on one speed. That's a really fascinating philosophy. I can't wait to see what happens with that. The other thing he said I thought was interesting too was there are a lot of closet bad ball hitters out there that take pitches they can do damage with because they've been programmed to only swing in zone. If you can produce slug above the zone, you should probably swing regardless of it being a ball and strike. Now that I don't like. I feel like that conflicts with his other statement. It's not necessarily about reducing choices. I guess in that vein, you're still saying I'm choosing to target that zone. I'm choosing to target that pitch in that zone. So I'm going to swing in that zone with the barrel with conviction. So maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you say that is a zone I feel like I can keep in my pocket. I can keep on my radar and I don't have to eliminate that. But you still want to eliminate the bad zones, right? But maybe you have a swing that's geared towards hitting the low ball. Maybe you have a swing that's geared toward hitting the outside ball. I don't know. Every hitter is different. And that's why it's important to have individualized coaching and individualized plans for each player because You can't have a cookie cutter method for every single hitter. Guys have different swing paths, they have different attack angles, different biomechanics. Everything works different. And that's why you need guys like this to work with hitters like that on stuff like this to go through all those data points. But that to me says more about like it's okay to chase. But if you're eliminating other zones and you're saying, okay, this is a zone I'm not going to eliminate, or pitch in this zone I'm not going to eliminate, I guess it's okay. I don't know. Let me know what you think about those philosophies. I think that's fascinating. I will say the Angels, I know people are saying, well, why would you hire a coach from the Angels? They stink. Well, they did a good job of getting some minor leaguers to the big leagues recently. They've had Zach Neto up, Nolan Shawna Joe Adell's improved. They developed Taylor Ward. Their catcher, whose name escapes me right now, who's really good, who has been good when he's healthy. They've developed some decent hitting prospects. So he's been part of that. Now, their problem has mostly been pitching and leadership. That all kind of crap rolls downhill. So I'll be very curious to see what he does. Let me know what you think of those hitting philosophies. Let me know how you're feeling in the comments. Let us know how you're feeling in the comments about Rob Refsnyder going to the Mariners. And if the Guardians turn to Austin Hayes, how do you feel if they do that? And how do you feel about where they stand with their offense right now and what their actions are saying to you as a fan about the team, what you're expecting? And try to, don't get mad about Cody Heuer. I'm telling you, you can feel however you want, but the Cody Heuer thing doesn't matter. He's a minor league signing, and he might end up, throwing 40 innings with a 3.2 ERA for all we know, because he has the talent. And this team, if there's one thing they can do, is they can work with pitching. So I wouldn't worry about that. But let me know what you think about the Rob Refsnyder thing, the whole inactivity. Thankfully, I didn't record this right after the Rob Refsnyder signing, because I would have been much louder, much angrier, much more ridiculous. Probably would have embarrassed myself, sound like an idiot, which maybe I still do. I guess my rage came down from 11 a little bit on that, but we'll see. I cannot not address offense this offseason. They just can't. Thanks for tuning in today on Locked On Guardians. Tune in Wednesday as Jeff will be back with you as a solo show. He'll talk about Cody Heuer a little bit. He's got some background on him. Talk about the trade market. He'll talk about some guys who peaked their rookie year and then never show that level of excitement ever again. I'll talk to you more about that. Hey, there's still time. If Locked On Guardians made your Spotify Wrap, prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Tag our national Locked On Guardians, Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform. We'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club. Get your favorite show ad-free, exclusive access to members-only Discord channel. There's only about a week left to do that, so get on it. In the meantime, stay safe, stay warm. Trying to get too enraged like I did the other day or today, and continue to listen to some Guardians baseball talk as we enter the depths of the winter. Tune in tomorrow for more of Jeff. In the meantime, thank you all for hanging out. Go Guardians, go. Please do something. Anything. Please.